Just having you here makes our ceremony look cheap, she spat at me. There I was, a high school dropout, invited to the wedding of a friend who had made it big. It was my first time at such a fancy, formal event, and I was a bit nervous. And there was my friend's bride, hurling insults at me. Could you, the uneducated trash, cut ties with my husband? Huh, is that okay? You're the one who said we should cut ties. I'm washing my hands of whatever happens from here on out. She, who could only judge people by their education or job titles at face value, probably had no idea who a guy like me, a middle school dropout, really was. I'm Rick. Just a humble pianist, nothing much to write home about. I love interacting with all sorts of people and zip around the world. Along the way, I play my heart out on the piano, dropping by jazz bars and restaurants. Sometimes I'd even play on street pianos. That's how I made a little coin, just getting by day to day. I'm not too keen on saying this about myself, but I grew up in a relatively affluent household. The piano that's now my bread and butter, I was forced into lessons starting at the tender age of 3. In competitions mixed with adults, I was frequently awarded prizes, being called a prodigy. Looking back now, it's pretty embarrassing. But that life crumbled when I was in elementary school. Dad's business tanked, and we had to move to a tiny apartment out in the sticks. Because it was a communal housing situation, playing the piano at home was out of the question, both in terms of the noise and the rules. However, I just couldn't give it up, so I'd hit the school's music room every day after class to practice. One day, as I finished a piece, I unexpectedly heard applause. Looking towards the sound, there was a boy standing there. Moved, it seemed, almost to tears. Wow, that was the Minute Waltz by Chopin, right? Yeah, that's right. Amazing, amazing. What else can you play? Well, something like this. As I played Schumann's Traumerei, his eyes lit up even more. That's really awesome. How long have you been playing piano? Since I was 3. I started because I had to, but then I grew to love it. Do you play at home too? Nope. I live in an apartment, so I can't really play there. That's why I'm here every day. At that, he just went, I see. He seemed really impressed with my passion for the piano. I'm Tom. Can I come listen again tomorrow? I'm Rick. Sure thing. I play almost every day, so drop by if you're free. I shook hands with Tom firmly. From that day on, my solo performances had an audience. As time went by, Tom and I got closer. Turns out his dad is some big shot at the Treasury, and he's from a well-off family. Do you play an instrument, Tom? Well, I mess around with the violin a bit. That's pretty cool. The violin seems tough. Yeah, it's hard. That's why I'm not really good at it. My mom keeps scolding me, asking why I can't play it. Tom looked down sadly. But his expression changed instantly, brightening up dramatically. His face became so bright that it was hard to believe it was the same person. I was really moved by her piano playing, Rick. He leaned in close to me suddenly, being intense as he spoke. I'm really touched that my piano moved him, but I never expected this much. Hey, Tom. Yeah. How about next time we play together? My piano and your violin. When I asked for a session, his face fell a bit. Not until my violin is good enough for your piano. Okay. All right then. Let's practice together for the next 3 years in middle school. Okay. Tom seemed to hesitate with his words. At that time, I didn't think much of it, but just a few days later, I learned what he meant directly from him. What? You're taking exams for a school far away? Yeah, so it looks like we won't be able to practice together. Sorry. That's okay. I mean, you've got dreams too, right? Dreams. Actually, my dream just recently. Never mind. Tom started to say something but then stopped himself. Respecting his feelings, I didn't ask any further. Instead, I extended my pinky finger. Pinky, swear. No matter how late it is, we've got to play together. You bet. Tom extended his pinky too. We linked them, sealing our promise for a future session. I'll send you letters, Tom. I didn't know about Tom, but as for me, I didn't have a cell phone and couldn't afford to waste money on home phone calls. So, I decided to send letters, a relatively cheap way to keep in touch. Yeah, I'll be waiting. Our paths diverged, and I ended up going to the local public middle school in my hometown. I didn't join any clubs. Instead, I spent all my after-school hours playing the piano in the music room. I was determined not to fall behind Tom, who I was sure would level up in his absence. My passion for improving my performance was burning strong, but that was inside. In contrast to my inner fire and the hot summer temperatures of our 8th grade year, an incident that happened was chilling. Dad. My mom and I watched as my father received an examination in the hospital bed. He had collapsed at work, and after getting the call, I left school early to rush over. He barely responded to our calls, extremely weak. It was hard to tell if he had any strength left. He'll need to stay in the hospital for a while to be observed. That's what the doctor said, and our anxiety only grew. To distract myself from the worry, I threw myself even more into piano. Desperately, I kept hammering away at the keys, mastering Mussorgsky's Night on Bald Mountain, which I'd been practicing. The unsettling feel of the music matched the unease in my heart, and I was oddly drawn to it. I was particularly engrossed that day, completely forgetting that I was in the school's music room. I didn't even realize that a few classmates had come in and were listening to my solo performance. Wow, you're really good at the piano, Tom. The girls from my class were there, clapping their hands, the sound filling the music room. The sound of clapping hands echoed through the music room. I had intended to be alone, so I had exaggeratedly moved to the rhythm and made odd movements. Feeling embarrassed about it, I ended up giving a curt thank you in response. To me, it seemed like I was just trying to act cool, and my shame only grew. I worried if it showed on my face. Do you always play here? Yeah, almost every day. I'm the quiet type, not really fitting in with the class crowd. These moments of playing after school were the only times I felt some relief. Well, that's awesome. Can I come listen again tomorrow? Hearing those words, I was reminded of the first time I met Tom. I realized our meeting had also been because of the piano. The black and white keys had brought someone like me into someone else's orbit. Of course, you can. I was so happy, I almost cried as I replied. But then, what's this? The poor kid's getting carried away. My archenemy had appeared. Amelia from my class, along with her 3 lackeys, taunted me daily for being poor. Every day, those 3 hangers-on would join in and create a ruckus, squawking and screaming like it was their job. Why on earth is someone like you at this school? Having a has-been poor person around just brings down the whole vibe. Amelia jeered with a barbaric laugh. The girls who used to enjoy my piano playing had become completely subdued. I wondered who was really bringing down the mood. I fought this, but unfortunately, I didn't have the guts to say it out loud. Sorry, was all I could muster. The unrelenting ridicule was too much, and I left the music room. Wiping tears with the sleeve of my uniform, I ran all the way home to escape. Despite everything, I continued to play the piano every day. Amelia and her friends would always throw cold water on my efforts, but I couldn't give up the piano. With single-minded determination, no matter how much they interfered or what insults they hurled, I kept on hammering at the keys. Yet, my piano playing had changed more than I was aware. Ha ha, I was out of breath from playing so intensely. Sweat was beginning to seep all over my body. That was awesome today. Thanks. I couldn't take their words at face value. At some point, my reason for playing the piano shifted from love to a way to release the pressure of a cornered heart. It was a means of releasing the distortions of a mind compressed by a terrifying presence. In essence, it had become a form of escapism. I knew this wasn't good, but I didn't know any other way to clear the horrible feeling inside me. Here he goes again. Can't you read the room? Amelia's taunts grew worse as my mood fell. Day after day, and eventually, I stopped going to school. I wanted to play the piano. The only place to play was at school. But going there meant facing a barrage of insults. Caught in this nightmarish triangle, I was hit by an even greater despair. Honey, my father had become cold, covered with a cloth. My mother was clinging to his right arm, crying. Dad. Strangely, I didn't shed any tears. Instead, I felt an intense regret. The last time my dad had heard me play was when I was very young. I had never had the chance to show him how much better I'd gotten because I never participated in competitions. I just kept playing at school. I've improved a lot. I'm on a whole different level now. Despite all these thoughts, I never had the chance to show him. And that was incredibly frustrating. After my dad passed away, my mother and I moved in with her parents. Right after graduating from middle school, we headed to Germany. My grandfather, my mother's father, was half German and lived over there. My mother, a quarter German, was named Ellie. Hey there, welcome back, Rick. I'm back, Grandpa. One night, when I got home, I ran into my grandpa in the living room. He was watching TV while petting the dog. Did you go to that jazz club again today? Yep. Since coming here, I never enrolled in any educational institution. I just went from bar to bar around the neighborhood, showcasing my piano skills. I used the tips I got right there and somehow managed not to rely on my grandparents. Time flew by, and self-proclaimed pianist Rick became a 30-something. Now I'm back from Germany, settled down in the US. I kind of miss my hometown, so I rented a room in the same apartment I used to live in and started living alone. Even though I say I've settled, I jet set around the world whenever I have a spare moment. I meet all sorts of people, share perspectives, and get updated. With every encounter, I feel like I'm evolving, which is incredibly fascinating. Even with my performances, which I'm pretty confident about, traveling the world makes me realize I still have a long way to go. When I played on a street piano in Italy, a lanky old man showed up out of nowhere and casually began to play Schubert's Rollkönig, and my jaw just dropped. In a French tavern, while I was playing Ravel's Judo, a girl who looked to be in her teens asked to play a duet with me. It would be a good experience for someone like me who had always played solo. I readily agreed, but man, that girl was amazing. Instead of just following along, she actually led the way. Our first duet was a terrifyingly huge success, and the crowd went wild. That's how I continue to be tempered by the world, leveling up as a pianist. There have been plenty of challenges, but I really like the free life that could elevate me. This time I went to Austria. After my trip, I returned to the country and somehow managed to get back to my apartment from the airport with my heavy luggage. Wow, there's a pileup here. Looking at the mailbox, there was a massive amount of mail stuffed inside, including letters and whatnot. Since I had told the landlord I was going on an international trip, I figured there wouldn't be any need for extra worry. There was a time I forgot to inform him before heading abroad. The mail had piled up so much that the neighbors thought something might have happened and reported it to the police. When I got back, I got a talking to from the landlord, safe and sound. Well then, What kind of news do we have here? After carrying the luggage to my room, I went through the mail. Most of it was utility bills or flyers from the local supermarket. Huh, what's this? There was one envelope that was particularly lavish and flashy. Wedding invitation. Someone's getting hitched. I looked at the back of the envelope for the sender's name. Tom, Amelia. I see. Tom is the one tying the knot. I got a bit excited seeing the name of an old friend I hadn't seen in a while. We had talked about sending letters. But since the summer of our 9th grade, we had stopped sending them entirely. It's been over 10 years, but it seems he hasn't forgotten about me. I pulled out the invitation from the envelope. It was folded in half, and inside there was a section to indicate whether I would attend or not. Of course, I'll be attending. I brought over a pen, circled will attend. Above it, I added delighted to. I wrote my address, name, and a congratulatory message. 11 p.m. I'll have to send it back and call tomorrow. Closing the folded invitation, there was a handwritten message from Tom and his bride. Tom has had strong penmanship since we were kids in elementary school, and it looks like that hasn't changed. Right below, in the distinctive upward slanting script, there was a similar message. I read both, chuckled to myself, and decided to call it a night. The jet lag was hitting me a bit, but the fatigue was easily overcome. On the day of the wedding, when I arrived at the venue, it turned out to be an extremely famous upscale hotel. This was my first time attending such a posh and formal ceremony, and I was a bit nervous. Hey there, long time no see, Rick. While I was looking for my seat, I heard a voice from behind. Oh, Tom, congratulations on your wedding. Thanks, I'm glad you could make it. It had been a good 15 years since we last saw each other. We didn't bother with formalities and simply celebrated our reunion with a firm handshake. Next to him stood the bride, who looked at me with a bit of surprise. You became a bank president. Yeah, thankfully. That's amazing. Thank you. How about you? Weren't you in Germany for a while? Yeah, I left our local middle school and headed straight there. Ever since, I've just been living freely without pursuing further studies. I see. As we were catching up, a voice called out for Tom from a little distance away. Oops, excuse me. Tom looked over and gave a wave with his right hand as if to say catch you later. I don't know who it was, but he took off at a jog to say hello to another acquaintance. Yet, for some reason, the bride stayed behind, still looking at me. Rick, as in that Rick, the one who played the piano every day in the music room. Oh, yeah, that's me. Ha, you're a middle school dropout. That distinctive elongated inflection at the end of her sentences. The mocking choice of words. And then, the name Amelia on the invitation. I had my suspicions. The bride Amelia turned out to be the same Amelia who used to bully me back in middle school. Who would have thought we'd meet again after more than a decade? Just your presence makes our wedding cheap. Is that right? I'm sorry to have caused such a fuss. Hut, you feel sorry. Hut, well, it can't be helped that you are here today, but from here on out. At this moment, Amelia's face seemed somewhat more malevolent than the one I remembered. You low-educated trash should cut ties with my husband. Got it. Even though I had grown up, I was naturally infuriated by her words suggesting I sever ties with Tom. I couldn't remain as calm as before and retorted a bit. Tom has been my best buddy since elementary school, but do you really have the right to cut that bond? I do, because I'm his wife. I struggled to understand her reasoning. And just then, Tom came back. Sorry, Tom, I'm going to withdraw all my savings from the bank. I'll close that account too. What? Why? This is some kind of joke, right? Beside the astonished Tom, the bride was speechless. She didn't seem to comprehend what I was saying. No, Your bride told me to cut ties with a middle school dropout. Huck, Amelia, what are you talking about? Because. It seemed she was thrown off by Tom's question. Having a fallen poor man around ruins the atmosphere. It'll affect your work too, won't it? She continued to scream hysterically, not caring who was watching. Hey, why did you even invite such a poor person to the wedding? Amelia, that's too much. Apologize to Rick. No, I'm not wrong. Sorry, it looks like I've caused a disturbance at your wedding. I turned my back on them and headed for the exit. Rick, wait, please Rick. Tom grabbed my arm after I had walked a few meters. He was pleading for a chance to talk. I wasn't angry with Tom. I decided to return following his lead. Sorry, Rick. Lift your head up, Tom. I'm the one who should apologize. I got too emotional. Meanwhile, the bride stood with her arms crossed, facing away. Amelia, listen to me. It's about how Rick and I met. When Tom said that, she only turned her gaze toward him. It's a story from when I was still in elementary school. He began to recount the story from 15 years ago as if it had happened just the other day. My parents were bureaucrats in the Treasury Department, really strict. It wasn't just about studying. There were so many do's and don'ts. As a result, I never had much in common with the other kids in class. I had a hard time fitting in. On the contrary, it seems that he was somewhat coerced into playing the violin. Like my experience with the piano, he had been made to play since before he even started elementary school. I hated those days so much. When I got home, I had to study and practice again under strict supervision. To escape, I started wandering aimlessly around the school for hours after school. This was around when both Tom and I were in the 6th grade. It was also the time when my dad's business failed, and we couldn't afford a piano at home anymore. The bride, who had been crossing her arms, was now listening intently to Tom's story. It was on one of those days, as I passed the music room, I heard Puppy Waltz being played inside. Tom was very curious about who was playing. He said it sounded like a performance far surpassing even the level of our music teachers. When I entered the music room, a grade schooler was playing. I was blown away. Sure, it's a piece that's easy for kids, but it wasn't just skillful. It really hit me in the heart. You could tell that the performer was thoroughly enjoying playing the piano. The bride's eyes were a little red. That was the day I met you, Rick. Your playing mended my nearly broken heart. Tom had seen my playing as one of the few comforts from the pressures of his parents. That's why he kept coming to the music room every day after that. You seemed to enjoy playing so much that I started to enjoy playing the violin. Those days I used to hate were completely transformed. So he became positive about taking the middle school entrance exams and aced them. It was a little lonely to part ways with Tom after getting into middle school, but knowing that my playing had been the foundation for him made me proud and happy at the same time. I'd been complimented on my playing before, but I never thought I'd actually saved someone. After hearing Tom's story, the bride, Amelia, was in tears. It turns out that the high school dropout and so-called poor guy she'd looked down upon was the one who had laid the foundation for her current husband. Whether she was feeling regret or gratitude, I couldn't tell. Amelia, you said it yourself, didn't you? During middle school, when you were going through a tough time, the sound of the piano comforted you. I was surprised by the story and looked at Amelia with wide eyes. Don't look at me. She blushed and seemed embarrassed. Maybe it's because we shared similar experiences that we got along so well. I've traveled the world and seen many coincidences. But a serendipitous meeting like this is quite rare. Who knew I'd played Cupid without even realizing it? Rick, Tom asked, looking a bit embarrassed. Right, he doesn't know yet. The thing is, Tom, yeah, I was surprised too when I came to the venue, but your wife, she's my middle school classmate. What? No wonder Tom was shocked. Faced with this astounding fact, all three of us could only laugh. After we had our fill of laughter, Amelia bowed her head to me. Her hair, which must have been set for the wedding, drooped towards the ground. "I'm sorry. I said some terrible things without knowing anything." "Whoa, hold on, Amelia." Tom looked impressed by her, but for me, it was an emergency. If a guest at a wedding made the main bride bow, it could turn into quite the awkward rumor. Not just for that, I also want to apologize for middle school. After Rick stopped coming to school, I felt regret. I wanted to apologize so badly that I went to your house after graduation, but you had already moved out by then. "All right, just lift your head up now." Amelia turned back to face me again. Her makeup had been ruined by tears. She seemed to need a touch-up before anyone else. Not to make excuses, but my family is pretty strict, you know. From what she told me, her family sounded pretty tough, too. The stress had been piling up, and she'd been taking it out on me, apparently. That nasty comment earlier was due to the values ingrained in her by her parents, who cared about nothing but educational pedigree. In fact, she had graduated from a prestigious university and was working at a top tire company. "So, I'm really sorry," she apologized again. Amelia, once more, bowed her head to me. "Let's forget the past. Just make my best buddy, Tom, happy, will ya?" After their apologies, I felt my anger dissipate so much that I almost forgot what I was mad about. Then the wedding planner came over. It was time. I apologized to Amelia in return and encouraged her to go freshen up her makeup. "And Tom, about that thing, I've got it under control." "Yeah, I'm counting on you." I gave my best friend a thumbs up and took my seat. The wedding proceeded smoothly, and soon it was time for the entertainment after the bride's dress change. The relatives put on a splendid dance. After that, it was my turn to carry out the plan. I was led backstage to a dimly lit area where a piano awaited. Now, for the next act, we have the groom's best friend and a genius pianist, Rick's performance. After an over-the-top introduction, the spotlight was on me. The piece was Listily Bistram. It was a piece I'd thought of playing at someone's wedding someday. I never imagined my first performance would be at my best buddy Tom's wedding. The nervousness was different from playing in competitions, jazz bars, or on the street. It felt like the first piece was over in an instant. After a brief pause of about 10 seconds, I placed my hands on the keys again. Simultaneously, Tom stood up. It was a plan only the planner and the two of us knew about. As everyone looked on in surprise, the groom took out a violin hidden under the table. We made eye contact to sync our timing and started the second piece, Elgar Dammer. As I moved my fingers, memories of my travels flashed through my mind. Germany, England, Italy, France, Spain, Austria. The memories were too many to count. A lanky man who appeared out of nowhere. A girl I didn't know. Even after having played duets with so many people, today I was truly moved. The duet with Tom was more wonderful than any in my memory. The sound was perfectly in sync, playing off each other's nuances. The joy in the violin's melody was palpable. I felt a warmth in my eyes as I played. The audience, including the bride, were all in tears. Oh, what a perfect performance. A promise of 15 years. The duet between pianist Rick and violinist Tom, now a reality. As the last note and its resonance faded, applause filled the room. Once it died down, Tom took the mic. "Rick and I have been best friends since elementary school. We both played instruments even back then, but I wasn't a match for the genius pianist Rick. I was asked to do a duet, but I thought I didn't measure up and put it off until now." Back then, Tom wasn't enjoying the violin at all. On the other hand, I've always loved and played the piano. Perhaps he felt a gap there. I'm so glad that we could achieve that duet here today, he said. The venue was enveloped in applause once again. The talk was supposed to end here, but let me introduce him, Rick. He continued, embarking on an unplanned tale. He's Rick, my best bud. As I mentioned earlier, this guy's a piano prodigy. He's got a YouTube channel where he posts his performances, and he's quite the big shot, with over 1 million subscribers. Everyone, do yourselves a favor and check out his YouTube. As Tom explained, my YouTube channel, thankfully, has been viewed by many. I post one-off performances and clips of my international concerts. To add more, lately I've been dabbling in composing, with numerous commissions coming my way. Some of my works have even become worldwide hits. It's a bit crass to talk money, but there's about $700 million in the bank account at Tom's bank. Not that I live a life of luxury, I live quite comfortably. I plan to keep jet-setting around the world. Let's give him a big round of applause, Tom prompted, turning all the applause and eyes in the hall towards me. Without getting overly excited, I just gracefully bowed, as a pianist would. Since around the summer before my junior year of high school, anonymous letters began to appear in my desk and locker. They were simple: watch out, the tough guys are targeting you. Be on your guard against shakedowns or worse. These were tip-offs, written in distinctive rising handwriting. It was around that time that Amelia started showing up in the music room. There was something I always found odd. Although she bullied me daily, she never once interrupted my playing. She'd always wait until I'd finished a piece, shared the afterglow with the audience, and then she'd appear. It seemed like after enjoying the performance, she was quick to send me on my way home. If that's the case, then she could very well be the one behind the letters. Thinking back, the handwriting was identical to that on the wedding invitations. I tried contacting Amelia a few times to confirm, but she persistently played dumb. I figured it wasn't good to pry too much, so I kept it to myself and silently appreciated it. The wedding ended and people started leaving. While the parents were exchanging goodbyes, I was approached by a bunch of bored kids. That piano was awesome. Hey, thanks. Play that song. Upon further inquiry, that one turned out to be the theme song of a certain demon-slaying movie. I played just the chorus, and they were thrilled. That kicked off a flurry of requests. It tunes from the movie about a fake family, cursed objects, and more, and it turned into quite the riot. Eventually, the bustle settled down, and the newlyweds approached me. Rick, thanks so much for today. Same to you, thanks. But hey, about that thing with the bank account closing, is it true? Tom said that, and Amelia looked at me apologetically. Nah, of course not, I was just being emotional, sorry for spouting nonsense. That's a relief, Tom said with a relieved smile. Right, about that money, though. Yay, I'm planning to use that $700 million to create a music studio. Not a formal school, but a place to foster opportunities for engagement with music. I aim to provide support so that nobody has to give up on music because of financial constraints. When I opened up about my dream, 2 friends were on board. It seems they related to my take on music and were keen to help with setting up and running the place. Several days after the ceremony, I got a call from Tom. Appreciate what you did the other day. Found out today that Amelia's expecting. That might have been why she was so off-kilter then. Hope you can cut her some slack. As I was prepping for my next journey, I shot back a message. Congrats, buddy. To think my best pal's going to be a dad is quite something. Don't fret about the other day, all is well. On another note, you've got to check out the video dropping today. That evening, my channel saw a new video titled For My Dear Friends Go Live. It's a medley of dreams of love and love's greeting, the same pieces I played at the wedding. It's also meant to keep the memory of that moment from fading. I considered posting a duet with Tom, but I've decided to keep that now mythic performance to myself. A person's true nature can't be sized up by diplomas or just by what they say. I might have just a middle school education, but I see myself as someone who's made it in their own right. The same goes for Amelia. Judging by how she was with me back in middle school, you'd think she was quite the piece of work. But in reality, sending those anonymous letters or trying to get me home safe before trouble hit shows she has a big heart, albeit her awkward way of showing it. I've come to appreciate what matters in life by engaging with folks across the globe. Some places might not boast the finest education systems. That doesn't mean the people from there are all bad eggs. The essence is deeper down. What you believe and what you think. That's the key. I intend to express my true self through my piano playing. And I hope that, one day, it might just be someone's salvation. My name is Tid, 30-year-old, and still single. After graduating from college, I started working as a salesperson at a company. The main products of my company are metalwork, creating parts used in various machines. It's a pretty well-known company in the industry, with stable performance. I've always done well in sales, though saying I've never faced tough times would be a lie. I was even being considered for a promotion to section chief, but a single incident turned my career upside down. One day, I received an angry call from a major client I was in charge of, claiming that the parts delivered did not fit. I've been involved with the sales of a product that we've been delivering for many years, right from its development stage. It's also the main product of our department, receiving orders of tens of thousands every month, and without it, our clients' production lines could even stop. That's why I always handled our transactions with the utmost care to ensure there were no mix-ups with the product numbers. There's no way the wrong product could have been delivered. In a rush, I issued instructions for the correct product order while also striving to get a handle on the situation to identify the cause. Upon investigation, I found a specification change document with alterations that made no sense, and on it was a signature that wasn't mine. It turns out, a coworker from my cohort, Ethan, had apparently contacted the client under my name to communicate changes in specifications. From the client's perspective, they would naturally be upset, expecting the specifications to have changed, only to receive a product with the old specifications. Despite reporting this to my department head and the branch manager, they wouldn't believe it wasn't my fault. Recently, a similar mistake had occurred in the department next door, and measures had just been put in place to prevent a recurrence. With repeated ordering mistakes in our own branch, the branch manager, already under fire at an executive meeting, was furious. I was ordered to stay at home, and Ethan took over all the client dealings I had built up over the years. Can I at least handle the cleanup for this order mistake? My heartfelt pleas were quickly dismissed by the branch manager. 2 weeks later, after my suspension was lifted, the order given to me was a reassignment to the manufacturing facility. The thing is, Ted, we want you to gain some hands-on experience with the manufacturing process, so you can really bring that knowledge back into your sales work. It's just for a few years, you know. With those words, the branch manager hurriedly encouraged me to leave the room. Being shifted from sales to the factory floor was effectively a demotion, and no one in the past have ever returned. I was prepared for this, but it still hit me hard. I was so shocked that I considered resigning right away, but that would have played right into the hands of the branch manager, my supervisor, and Ethan, and more importantly, it would have felt like betraying all the clients who had helped me along the way, so I held back. I have to repay them by making quality products on the factory floor. With that thought, I decided to take on the job at the factory. The factory workers, knowing I came from a sales background, didn't hide their disdain for me from the start. "What's the matter with you? Can't you even do this?" Look at Mr. Elite here. Can't even lift this. Do it yourself. What? You haven't been shown how? Must be tough for a fancy degree to not know something without asking. Huh? The machinery and equipment were all new to me, and just looking at the manuals wasn't enough to understand them. Furthermore, the workers had modified the rules and workflows to suit themselves, making it impossible for an outsider to make sense of it. I had to constantly ask the workers everything from how to use the machines to where the tools were kept, and each time, I was met with cold stares and verbal abuse. This work was a 12-hour shift, either from 8 a.m. to 8 p.m. or from 8 p.m. to 8 a.m. To top it off, the factory was filthy with machine and cutting oils, and operating the machines and setting up the metal components required laborious work, drenched in sweat. Tid, we don't have a shower in this factory. Take your time and have a bath when you get home. When the factory manager told me this on my first day, I thought it was a joke, but there really was no shower. To add insult to injury, it seems they tacked on a rule just as I was assigned, a 2-year ban on personal vehicles. The worker was all pros, and much was clear. Living far from work, I had no choice but to commute by train. Going to work was fine, but on the way back, I could tell I was being blatantly avoided by everyone around me in the train. Day in and day out, I was verbally abused at work, and during the commute, I was treated like garbage by those around me. My spirit gradually began to fray. Then, one day after several months of this, coming home from a night shift, I spotted a woman on the same train being harassed by a middle-aged man. What's with that attitude after bumping into me? That man is yelling at the top of his lungs. The woman looked down, intimidated and apologizing, but he was having none of it. It was Sunday, and the carriage was empty, but the others just ignored. I was exhausted from the night shift and thought to just lean against the wall and close my eyes without getting involved, but the shouting didn't seem to end. The woman's voice was getting fainter, and I could hear her sobbing. My irritation at the man who was ignoring the apologizing woman grew. Knock it off, she's apologizing, isn't she? Before I knew it, I was stepping in between them. Who the hell are you? The man turned his anger towards me this time. But upon seeing me, he couldn't help but smirk. What do we have here? A hero in such a filthy outfit, huh? Looks like someone from the bottom of the barrel got too big for his britches, acting all high and mighty. Is that all you wanted to say? I had no intention of denying it, but I couldn't stand people who belittled the work of others, no matter the job. In fact, the reason I was able to achieve results as a salesman before coming here was thanks to the workers who were covered in oil and sweat at the factory, something I had come to realize over these past few months. Unfortunately, I wasn't exactly welcomed by those workers. And it seems that these months of physical labor had toughened me up considerably. The guy backed down meekly after seeing me stand my ground and muttered, "Umph, loser," as his parting shot. Thank you, I didn't know what to do. The woman I had helped approached and spoke to me. It's nothing, really, just, don't get too close. I was fully aware of how dirty my attire was without her needing to point it out. But she didn't seem to mind my appearance and came up to talk to me anyway. She introduced herself as Karen, apparently a 28-year-old office worker in a downtown company. She usually commutes by this train as well, but it seemed that today was the first time she had seen me. Do you usually take this train? What time do you normally ride? I was at a loss for words. When I explained that my schedule varied because I worked both day and night shifts, she was surprised. I thought factory jobs were just from morning till evening. I didn't know there were factories that operated differently. I wanted to ask why she thought that, but she got off at the next station. Let's chat again if we ever end up on the same train again. Thank you so much for today. Saying this, she continued to wave and bow until she was out of sight. I never thought we'd see each other again. But strangely, We started running into each other a lot on the same train. Once we recognized each other, we struck up conversations and exchanged numbers, eventually hanging out in our free time. We opened up about our lives too. I learned that her family owned a small workshop in a little town and that she was expected to take over since she didn't have any brothers, but she wasn't interested in doing so. I also shared about the various jobs I've done and why I was currently working at the factory. It turns out her father's workshop was a day operation only. No wonder she was so surprised about night shifts. Over time, I became quite attracted to Karen's character, and it seemed like she grew to like me as well. One day, Karen looked more serious than usual and told me she wanted me to meet her parents. And she also wanted me to see the family workshop. When I visited her home, Karen's parents were really welcoming and friendly, even though it was my first time meeting them. And then, suddenly, Karen's father said he had something he needed to discuss with me. Our workshop is barely earning money each month, and honestly, we're at our breaking point. We've got a bunch of craftsmen with good skills, but they don't know how to sell it. I've been on the factory floor so long. The whole sales and management side of the business is Greek to me. It seems that Karen has introduced me because of my sales experience and knowledge of the manufacturing floor, and that's why I've been invited here today. They're not asking me to quit my current job, which would be a lot to ask for. Instead, they wonder if I could offer advice or teach them some sales techniques on my days off. Of course, we'll make sure you are paid for this job. Karen's mother adds. It seems like she's the one who handles the finances. After giving it some thought, I decided to accept their offer. But I requested, could you employ me as a staff member? I wanted to dedicate myself fully to this, not just dabble in it. Let me handle the job of selling such high-quality products. I'm sure it'll be rewarding for me too, I say with enthusiasm. Looking at the determination on my face, Karen's father nods as if he's made up his mind. The first time I saw the products of Smith Manufacturing, I was astounded. The machined parts, made with absolute precision to match the blueprints, were incomparably better than the products my own company used to sell. And that was accomplished without any significant manufacturing equipment to speak of. I heard that despite their quality, they were being sold for less than half their worth. The thought that such excellence was being overlooked in the world seemed like a loss for society as a whole. With that in mind, I quickly prepared my resignation letter and quit my job. The elites sure lack patience, don't they? The manager chuckled. When I went to the factory to sort out my properties, not just the workers but also the factory manager threw sarcastic remarks to me. But none of that reached my ears. I was too caught up in the exciting opportunity I had found. When I visited Smith Manufacturing, the president and all the employees welcomed me. And it seemed like Karen was pretty happy too. You helped me out in the train, and now you're stepping in to help my dad's family business. I finally felt like I found where I belong after losing it for so long. Right away, I used the network I built during my sales days to pitch our product line. From my brand new desk in a small office, I called around to various contacts nonstop. On the day of the appointment, the person who showed up was a contact from a company I used to deal with. It's been a while, Ted. Who would have thought we'd meet like this? I had been doing business with Steve for about 8 years since I started at my previous job. Now he's working in a small town workshop. Despite being busy, he made time to meet because of our long-standing relationship. So, how's it going? Has the company been managing okay without me? It was meant to be a light joke, but the moment I said it, Steve's face clouded over. Well, I mean, they're doing all right, I guess. The guy who took over for me, Ethan, seemed to have caused quite a few problems in just a few months. There were delays in delivery, and many products were delivered as special acceptances because they couldn't meet the expected tolerances. Mistakes in quantities were common, and he even managed to send a delivery to the wrong factory once. Thanks to Steve's efforts, things had been kept under control, but he said, "We're about to reach our limit. None of this happened when you were here, Ted." Steve looked pretty down. "That's also why I was so glad to hear from you, Ted. I'd only heard from Ethan about a job transfer, and you didn't even say goodbye when you left. I'm really sorry about that. I was ordered by my boss not to contact any clients, but it was incredibly rude, to say the least." "So, what's this thing you wanted me to see?" Steve initiated. I silently laid out the product samples I had brought on the desk. "This is, wow, incredible." Steve's reaction upon seeing them was the same astonishment I had felt the first time. He was amazed by their quality and precision. "This shape, this precision, it's unbelievable." And his amazement grew when he learned they were made in a factory that only had outdated machines. "I'll talk to my boss right away. Honestly, he's also fed up with our current supplier, so I'm sure he'll be on board with this." "Oh, I'm sorry, I mean for you, Ted. Don't worry about it, I'm with Smith Manufacturing now." I said it firmly. At the next interview, alongside Steve, the head of the procurement department was also present. Caught off guard since I wasn't informed beforehand, I was surprised, but that executive made an unexpected proposal. "You're Ted from Smith Manufacturing, right? I've heard about you. To get straight to the point, we want to sign an exclusive contract with you." I was taken aback by the sudden offer. Here's what I was told. "There's a certain company and a supplier. You know who I'm talking about, Ted. We've been getting poor quality from them, so we'd like to switch our entire order to Smith Manufacturing. I hear you've been making parts with old equipment. It may be a bit forward, but would you consider taking on funding from us to upgrade to the latest machinery? We're looking to have you supply most of the parts for our products moving forward, as we'll need a larger quantity. Please continue to produce the top quality products you're known for," he said, bowing his head. I was so overwhelmed by the rapid developments that I couldn't think straight, but once I regained my composure, I bowed deeply and shook hands, saying, "I look forward to a good relationship in the future." I headed back to the company and reported to the president. He was surprised, seemingly at a loss for words, but he tearfully thanked me, saying, "Thank you, Ted, thank you." "President, the real challenge is still ahead of us. We all need to learn how to use the new machines." Initially, the craftsmen were hesitant about the change in their environment. But that was expected. They take pride in their work. Plus, they're all pretty up there in age. There was resistance to using the new machinery. But after I earnestly persuaded them, they agreed. Never in my dreams did I think I'd be learning to use new machinery at this stage of my life. This new salesperson sure has a tough way of using people. Huh? The top-skilled craftsman, Mike, who's the same age as my dad, just cracked a joke about it. But despite his words, he seemed thrilled that their products were being recognized by the world. Who would have thought our little workshop would be supplying such a big client? Even the president didn't expect to land such a big contract, but it's only natural for this workshop, with its highly skilled craftsmen, to get the recognition it deserves. If anything, we owe it to Steve for setting up that meeting. After I started working at Smith Manufacturing, it wasn't long before executives and the factory manager from my previous job came to visit. Wondering what they wanted, they started off with a plea, "Please," as they bowed their heads. It was predictable, but their sudden change of attitude surprised me. "Ted, I'm really sorry about what happened before. The investigation proved you were right. We'll put you back in sales and have a post ready for you, so please come back." The factory manager even had the gut to say something ridiculous. "I'm truly sorry if we made you feel uncomfortable at the factory. I'd like to apologize on behalf of all the workers. Can we leave past in the past?" The branch manager and the factory manager took turns apologizing, but of course, my mind was made up. I appreciate the offer, but I find my current job rewarding and engaging, so I plan to stay with this company. I intend to work hard so that we can be known as your company's rival. I look forward to your guidance and encouragement." I delivered this response without changing my expression and asked them to leave. Later on, thanks to the hard work of the craftsmen, the transition to the new manufacturing equipment went smoothly, and Smith Manufacturing became one of the most well-known factories in America. We've completely taken over the market share of my old company, and though the company has grown significantly, the president is already talking about retiring and wants to hand over the job to me. "I'm counting on you, Ted," all the employees agree. He says this, but I have no intention of taking over just yet. Machining is a deep field. There's still so much more for me to learn. And I want to make the company something that my wife Karen, who I've married, and our future child can be proud of. Class reunion notice. Among the ads and newspapers in the mailbox, there was one envelope. When I opened it, it turned out to be a notice about a high school reunion. When was the last time a reunion was held? Maybe about 10 years ago. In any case, it's been quite a while. The organizer listed on the notice was David. David, that's unexpected, him taking on such a bothersome role. As I was reminiscing about the past, suddenly, the front door opened. "Excuse me, Dr. Brown. I fell off my bike, and my front tooth is wobbly. Can you take a look at it? Are you okay, Mary? Come on into the examination room. I'll take a look right away." "Thanks, Doc. I'm John Brown. I run a dental clinic in a village that's been facing depopulation. Up until 2 years ago, I was working at a dental hospital in the city, but this village had neither a clinic nor a hospital, only a mobile clinic that came by a few times a month with general practitioners and surgeons. Hearing that, I decided to be a dentist here. When I first arrived, I found that most of the villagers had cavities or periodontal disease during dental checkups. Maintaining oral health is actually very important. There was someone whose headaches went away after treating their cavities. Another person said their digestion improved after their periodontal disease was treated because they could enjoy their meals again. The dental clinic was well received by the villagers. There are a lot of nice people in this village. They share vegetables and fruits they grow at home, and since I'm single, they bring me various side dishes, worrying about my diet. "Dr. Brown, would you like some pork beans?" "Thank you, Linda. Your pork beans is delicious. I love it." Especially, the ladies often bring various things, but there is also something a bit troubling. "Dr. Brown, take a look at this photo. Betty, is it? Again. This girl turned 28 last month. She might not be a beauty, but she has a good temperament. What do you think, Doc?" Well, like this, along with vegetables and side dishes, the ladies would bring matchmaking photos. "I've only been here for 2 years, and I can't afford to get married." So I'd always respond with a wry smile to evade the topic. Well, such conversations can be seen as part of community communication, so it's not too bad. In this tranquil village, I've been living slightly more lively days. The notice of the high school reunion arrived in mid-July. It's been a while since the last reunion. Might as well go. The venue is in a restaurant downtown far from the village. Entering the restaurant, I saw familiar faces. "John, is that you? Long time no see." The person who called out to me was Emily, who was our class president in senior year. "It's been a while." "Stop that, it's been nearly 15 years since we graduated. We met at a previous class reunion, and the smile on her face hasn't changed since then. And I'm not Smith anymore, I'm Davis. And I'm not Williams anymore, I've become Taylor. Things I thought hadn't changed, but it seems a lot can change in 10 years. I'm still Johnson, though I got married, but yeah. Well, men's last names usually don't change, do they? I guess you're right." It was a time when I was laughing and talking with some old friends. The organizer, David, suddenly interrupted the conversation. Is everyone doing well? I'm currently the office manager at Jackson General Hospital. How about you all? Is work going good? David's grand entrance made the previously friendly atmosphere go quiet. Jackson General Hospital, that's his family's place, right? I wondered why he suddenly started talking about his family business. Office manager at your parents' hospital. I've seen that in dramas. The hospital office manager isn't that big of a deal, right? Wait, wasn't David aiming for medical school? Didn't he become a doctor? The reactions were not what he had expected, and David's face fell. Just then, Emily looked at me as if remembering something. John, you went to dental college, right? Are you working as a dentist now? Yeah, weren't you working at the dental hospital affiliated with the university? Before I could answer, Tom, my closest friend, replied to Emily's question. As he did, several people around David gathered around me. Really? So you did go into the medical field? That's awesome. Dentists perform surgeries too, right? An associate at a university-affiliated hospital sounds pretty cool. Everyone's reaction seemed to completely sour David's mood. He glared at me intensely before walking away without saying a word. Later, after the toast, I saw David again. Oh no, I heard him mutter in a panicked voice before he hurried out of the restaurant again. During this 10-year reunion with my classmates, little groups formed here and there as everyone shared updates about their lives and reminisced about our high school days. By the way, Tom, I don't work at the dental college anymore. Really? Where are you working now? I've been running a dental practice in a small rural town for the past 2 years. It's a peaceful and quaint place. At first, everyone was surprised that I had left the university hospital on my own, but they became very interested as I talked about my life in the village. John, you're still single. You should try arranged dates. That might suit someone shy like you. Don't talk like it's none of your business, I said, joining in the laughter with the guys. Then, Emily nostalgically chimed in. Being a dentist in the countryside suits you, John. You were always kind in high school and seemed like the type who couldn't leave villagers without a doctor. I get it, that's so John, always approachable and soft-spoken. Unlike David, who always came off as condescending and was hard to talk to, but with John, it was easy. As everyone started to say similar things, I began to feel a bit embarrassed. That's when David came back. Really? John is running some dentist's office in a sleepy, shrinking town. That fits a plain guy like you. Ha ha ha. His comment ruined the pleasant atmosphere once again. David really hadn't changed at all. Always trying to make himself look better by putting others down. Disappointed by his unchanged behavior, Tom seemed to think the same thing. David's the same as ever. Can't join the conversation without looking down on others, he said with a sigh of relief. The women, including Emily, began to express their disapproval. Don't you realize that's exactly why you were disliked back then? If he was aware, a grown adult wouldn't make such lame comments. They began to voice their dissatisfaction with David. Everyone must be angry that their precious opportunity was ruined. However, while David looks embarrassed, he says, "Oh, I'm honest at heart and can't lie." He protested, wondering if he was unable to back down, but he seemed to be aware that he was in pain. The target was on me, who had been silent for a long time. You all are making a fuss over John, but is that story about him leaving the university hospital true? What if he was actually so incompetent that he got fired and had to flee to the countryside? I was about to retort angrily when I saw something black flying towards David. I thought something black was flying toward David, but at the same time, a woman's voice said, "It's probably you who is useless, bro. Flunked out 3 times and still couldn't get into maid school. Can't even handle accounting. You had to beg Dad to put you in a cushy job as a director with just a title, didn't you?" Before everyone could react, more scathing words followed. David, making a sour face, picked up the black wallet that had fallen to his feet. The black object that had flown through the air was this. Just go home. That's what you say to your sister, who came all the way to bring your wallet. Leaving your important wallet at home, you'll always be a klutz. David was scolded by his sister and looked a bit sulky. I had no idea David had a sister. Neither did the rest of the classmates, apparently, as they all looked on in surprise at the exchange. David's sister scolded her brother and then turned to us with a bow. Sorry for showing such an embarrassing scene. My name is Lisa, his sister. I apologize for the trouble my brother may have always caused you all. After saying that, she bowed again, and just as I thought she was going to look at me, she walked briskly right up to me. You're Dr. Brown, who was at the Dental University Hospital until 2 years ago, right? Yes, that's me. Have we met somewhere before? This is actually the first time we've talked directly, but I've known about you, Dr. Brown, the famous oral surgeon, since my training days at the Dental University Hospital. Lisa said this with a happy face as she took my hand. Then the classmates nearby started buzzing again. A famous oral surgeon, John. John is such a renowned doctor. So, is Lisa a dentist too? Does that mean Lisa is John's junior? Lisa received the barrage of questions from the classmates with a smile. I'm a dental hygienist, actually. Unfortunately, I'm not a dentist. Dr. Brown has been known as a genius in oral surgery since his time at the Dental University, she replied. With Lisa's answer, everyone's gaze turned to me all at once. No, you're exaggerating. I'm not that special. I tried to deny it in a hurry, but my classmates were still buzzing. When I worked at the university hospital, indeed, the typical dental treatments like cavities weren't the main part of my job. My job was to perform surgeries on people who had injured their teeth or jaws in car accidents, or who had tumors in their jawbones. Of course, the success of an operation isn't due to my efforts alone. Anesthesiologists, nurses, and many others' cooperation are needed for success. Dr. Brown, I'm really sorry to ask in such a place, but may I make a request? Out of the blue, Lisa said something so serious after being so formal. Her expression was unusually intense. Thinking that she might have some important matter to discuss, we decided to move to a table in the corner of the venue. Shall we head over to that table then? Although our classmates seemed eager to listen in, they respectfully didn't follow any further. Before moving to the table, Lisa forcibly pulled David along with her, and once the three of us were seated, she began to speak with a serious look on her face, saying, Actually, it turns out that a man was seriously injured during a rugby game yesterday and had to be rushed to the emergency room. He had a fractured jaw and several broken teeth. Lisa seemed to be thinking about the patient and was wondering where to transfer her case, since the dentist at Jackson General Hospital couldn't handle the situation. However, because the injured man is a well-known player, David believes that if the hospital successfully performs the surgery, it would attract a lot of attention and become famous. He's been at odds with Lisa, opposing the transfer. David, Lisa's right, you know. We as medical professionals always have to think about what's best for the patient. Mark, the player, should be treated right here. David cut me off. Apparently, he doesn't want to hear my opinion, which is same as Lisa's. Lisa then glared at David. That's why, when I heard the rumor that Dr. Brown might leave the affiliated hospital of the Dental University, I asked you to poach him for our hospital, but you, David, ended up doing nothing. Hearing Lisa's serious voice, David finally fell silent. After a pause, Lisa turned to me and bowed her head again. Dr. Brown, would you please lend us your expertise? Me. Could you do the surgery at my hospital? Lisa continues to bow her head as I look confused. Our hospital is out of its depth with this case, and to be honest, I don't think the chances of a successful surgery are high at any other hospital. The only one who can get Mark back in the game is you, Dr. Brown. Please, I'm begging you. Moved by her desperation, I agreed to immediately check Mark's medical records and condition. Lisa was right. His injuries were severe. When I greeted Mark, who couldn't speak, he begged me with written words, his handwriting trembling, "Doctor, please, I want to get back to my team and play again soon." Convinced by his written plea, I resolved to help him. The next day, I consulted with Dr. Hill, the dentist at Jackson General Hospital, and arranged for him to assist me with the surgery, with Lisa helping as a dental hygienist. The surgery, which took just over 6 hours with everyone's cooperation, was a success. As I was preparing to return home, Lisa and David came to me. Lisa's eyes sparkled as she firmly grasped my hand. Watching Dr. Brown perform the surgery was inspirational. "Your skill is just as the reputation says." "No, even greater. It was a great learning experience. Thank you so much." "No, I should be thanking you for the precise assistance. You truly are an excellent hygienist, Lisa." I can't believe that Dr. Brown praised me. I'm so happy. As we shook hands vigorously, I found her excitement endearing. Then David said something surprising. "John, thank you. It was really helpful. I apologize for all the rude things I've said." "What?" I heard something very uncharacteristic of David, but I'll take it at face value. "Remember, Mark needs complete rest for a while, so please be careful with him." I was surprised by David's uncharacteristic words, but his gratitude was clear. After a friendly laugh, David bowed deeply and silently. "If there's anything you're concerned about, don't hesitate to get in touch. Everyone back in the village is waiting for me, so I'll take my leave now." After bidding farewell, I returned to the village. A month later, I heard that Mark was set to be discharged from the hospital. The surgery had become a topic on internet news, and the villagers praised me a lot for it. Perhaps because of that, I've noticed a slight increase in people bringing me matchmaking photos. Mark, after being discharged, praised the hospital's aftercare, and the hospital's reputation seems to be very good. At the next reunion, I imagine everyone will be pleasantly surprised by the change in David. "Dr. Brown, I've had this canker sore for 3 days now. What should I do? Patients keep coming to the small dental clinic in the village. I want to be of help to them in any way I can. I want to help them. That must be the essence of being a medical professional. I will deal with many more patients in the future." My wife was having an affair. I found out about this through a private investigator I had hired. The detective mentioned that he could look into the guy's identity for an extra fee, but I decided to stop there. That's enough. All that's left is to confront my wife. Sadness, anger, emptiness. A whole mess of emotions all mixed together like clay. My name is Michael. I met my wife, Lucy, on a matchmaking website. She had this classy vibe, and when she smiled and showed her dimples, I was instantly smitten. After a year of dating, we get married. Our wedding was a happy occasion, blessed by everyone. Lucy looked gorgeous in her pure white wedding gown, and I swore to myself that I'd protect this bride for the rest of my life. However, a year into our marriage, I noticed something was off with Lucy. Lately, she'd been putting on more makeup and smelling like perfume. I'm glad she wants to stay beautiful, but the sudden glam up was conspicuous. And she stopped using her cell phone in front of me. It was as if she was secretly communicating with someone. Seeing her like that made me think the unthinkable. I didn't want to imagine it, but I asked a detective to check if my wife was cheating. Weeks later, the detective hit me with evidence photos of Lucy arm in arm with some guy in neon-lit streets. Ironically, when I got the report from the detective, Lucy was supposedly on trip with friends. Of course, that was a lie. The trip was actually with her lover, a tidbit the detective shared as a freebie. I went home to find myself sitting alone on a chair in an empty living room, crying quietly. Tears dropped onto the white table. This table was a memento from before Lucy and I got married. I want to prepare delicious meals every day and set them on this table." I was thrilled to hear those words from Lucy, smiling at me with her cute dimples. It's exactly why I couldn't stop the tears. I was up all night waiting for my wife, who would return tomorrow. The next day, I heard the door open. Lucy entered the house and jumped a bit when she saw me in the living room. "Wow, you're here, weren't you at work? I took a day off today." Lucy said, "Oh, I see," and tried to go put away her things, but I stopped her. "I'm sorry, I'm just really tired from the trip," she said, trying to continue on her way, but when I scattered the affair photos on the white table, her face went pale. "Hey, who is this guy? Why would you do this?" Anger and sadness made my voice shake. Lucy initially turned pale, but gradually her expression became emotionless. The white table we bought together, filled with love and promises of daily delicious meals. Now, it was lined with evidence of her infidelity, something so far from love. She just stared at it. "Say something. I know you went on that trip with him." Then, Lucy showed her teeth in a smile. The moment that adorable dimple twisted, I felt a chill. "Oh well, cat's out of the bag. I thought I could get away with it because you're so clueless." Lucy's cold, unfamiliar tone left me speechless. She dropped her travel bag carelessly on the floor and pulled out her cell phone. "If you're so eager to know, should I introduce you?" Suddenly, she started making a call. "Hey, sorry. Yeah, looks like he found out. Can you come over to my place?" She was calling her lover. And within minutes, this lover arrived at our house. It seemed he was just returning from dropping Lucy off and had to turn around and come back. This man entered our home as if he owned the place, without a greeting, and laughed, saying, "Whoa, what a cramped place." "Hey Lucy, so you got busted, huh?" "Looks like it. Apparently, he hired a detective or something." "Wow, seriously, that's creepy." They were all over each other in front of me, flaunting their affair. I felt like I was trapped in a nightmare. "So, Michael, I'm marrying this man. Can we break up?" Lucy said that, and I was like, "What?" completely dumbfounded. Then she criticized me for not having enough money. Simply put, she was leaving me for a wealthy guy who owned his own company. Indeed, her lover had that nouveau rich air about him. He was just the type of man my brand-loving wife would fall for. I thought I should grab him by the collar since he stole my wife, but he had such an intimidating look that my legs just gave out from under me, pathetically. Lucy didn't show a hint of remorse, even when we discussed our future. She was glued to her lover instead. She said she didn't need any share of our assets and wanted a quick divorce. And apparently, she had no intention of paying alimony either. I couldn't find the words to fight back against Lucy and her lover, as they freely spouted nonsense after their infidelity. I just couldn't wrap my head around it. Amidst all this, her lover said something outrageous, laughing. "Hey, if you don't mind leftovers, you can have my ex-wife." It took me a moment to understand, but it seemed like he was already married too. So, it was a double affair. "Hey, why not? Take his wife. You dumped folks should get along just fine," Lucy added, laughing. Unbelievable. What is wrong with these people? Unable to stand their hurtful words, I told them to just take their stuff and leave, and I stormed out of the house. Their laughter echoed in the living room. I just wanted to run away as far as I could, right then. Damn it, damn it, damn it. That's when I was wiping my eyes, blurred with tears. I couldn't see, and I bumped hard into someone in front of me. I heard a scream. I quickly apologized, realizing it was a woman I had bumped into. To my surprise, she was crying too. A woman, standing in front of my house, weeping. My intuition kicked in. "Excuse me, by any chance, are you the wife of the man who went inside?" I asked. The woman, with a look of shock, wiped her tears with a handkerchief and silently nodded. Afterward, we decided to talk things over and headed to a nearby cafe. The other woman's name turned out to be Susan. When I heard her out, it seems Susan had her suspicions about her husband's infidelity and had been investigating it. And then, she managed to track down the home of the other woman, who is my wife, Lucy. By chance, Susan saw him dropping Lucy off at my place while she was in a cab. Seeing her husband's car suddenly make a U-turn and come back, she figured if he was still not done messing around with his mistress, she might as well confront them, so in a fit of anger, she came right up to my house. But then, hearing the laughter of her husband and Lucy through the window, and her husband's words, "I'm giving you my ex-wife," hit her ears, and a wave of sadness overwhelmed her. She stood frozen, crying right there, and that's when she bumped into me as I rushed out of the house. That's the story I got. I explained my own situation to Susan. How I'd been betrayed by my wife. I'd hired a detective, and that's how I found out about the betrayal. And that my wife had just asked me for a divorce right then and there. Susan just listened quietly to everything I had to say until the end. "Well, we're both going through a tough time, aren't we?" I said tentatively. Susan replied with a self-deprecating laugh. "I did want to believe in my husband, you know. Turns out, it was all for nothing." After that, we both fell into a silent pause. Accepting the reality of being betrayed and abandoned by the partner we loved took time. I'm sure Susan felt the same way. It was just when the waiter set down a refill of the coffee I had ordered. With a bit of difficulty, Susan said to me, "I'm sorry if this is out of line, but would you mind if I stayed at your place for a while?" I stopped stirring the milk into my coffee. She then explained that she married her husband against her parents' wishes and now had no one to turn to. Her friends are few and far away. Her husband controls the money, so she can't use it as she'd like to. Probably by the end of the day, her husband will tell her to leave the house. That's why she is pleading to work as a housekeeper and look for a house and a job at the same time, even if it's just for a little while. I was lost in thought while stirring my coffee, not saying a word. Then, Susan said with a sad smile, "I'm sorry. I've made an unreasonable request. Please forget it. My family warned me so many times not to marry that man. I regret not listening to them now. It was stupid of me to get involved with such a man." Saying that, Susan picked up the receipt and stood up from her seat. After bowing to me, she tried to leave the restaurant. Susan will have to leave the house where her husband lives. And the woman who will replace her is my wife, Lucy. I have a duty to help Susan. As she walked past me, I grabbed her hand. Susan looked at me in surprise. Her hand was freezing cold, and I gripped it even tighter. "To be honest, I'm not good with household chores, so I'd appreciate the help," I said with a laugh. When I said that, Susan replied, "Are you sure? It's a live-in position, you know." "Of course, it's fine. Just so happens I have a room free starting today," I told her. I went home, surprised by the drama unfolding on the day I was confronted with divorce. Susan packed her things and came to my house. We were both tired, so we headed straight to bed. I had Susan sleep in Lucy's room. The next morning, when I woke up, the clock read 6 a.m. It was earlier than my usual time. I thought about getting some more sleep, but the good smell lured me to the living room. To my surprise, there was breakfast on the table. "Good morning," said Susan in an apron, standing in front of the stove. "Wait, Susan, did you make all this?" "Yes. I'm not sure if it'll be to your taste, though." After eating, I couldn't help but exclaim, "Delicious." I hate to bring it up again, but my ex-wife, Lucy, used to say she wanted to make me breakfast every day. However, she wasn't a morning person, so I hardly ever got breakfast from her. In hindsight, that should have been a sign of her dishonesty, I thought as I sat in front of Susan's cooking. I'd been settling for convenience store breakfasts, so having a warm meal after so long made me feel really happy. Also, here's a lunchbox for you. I was surprised that she'd already prepared a lunchbox without me knowing. Later at work, when I opened my lunchbox, the food was beautifully arranged. And there were even veggies, making for a well-balanced meal. Susan's thoughtfulness was evident, and it touched me. My colleagues even complimented me. "Hey, your lunch looks great today. Your wife is amazing." Huh? I just smiled wryly and replied, "Right." From then on, having balanced meals every morning and evening, I noticed a positive effect on my work. I started landing new clients one after the other, leading to top sales that month. To be honest, I was surprised at myself. All thanks to Susan. Coming home to a house without a speck of dust, a testament to a perfect housekeeping. And it was Susan's smile, saying welcome back, was it a long day, that gave me courage. Gradually, the time I spent talking with Susan at breakfast and dinner became a healing time for my heart, scarred by my ex-wife's betrayal. One day, to express my gratitude, I invited her to dine out, saying, "Why don't we eat out for a change? I'm sorry for presuming to go to such a fancy place when I'm just staying your place," Susan said apologetically, but I shook my head. "On the contrary, I'm sorry I can't do more than this. I'm truly grateful for everything you've done, Susan." When I said that, Susan blushed and I was taken aback. Right when the meal was nearly finished, Susan said, "This may not be the right time to talk about this," and showed me a paper. It was a claim for alimony from her ex-husband. Apparently, she had consulted with a lawyer and started the process of claiming alimony. Her ex had some complaints, but it seemed she was able to receive the payment successfully. Since I was receiving alimony from my ex-wife around the same time, I had anticipated that Susan would get hers too. I managed to get some money, so now I can afford to rent an apartment, said Susan as she bowed her head to me. "Michael, thank you so much for letting a stranger like me stay in your home." I was silent for a moment, but quickly put on a smile. "I should be the one thanking you, Susan. You've helped me get through all this. Really, thank you." And with that, I bowed my head. When I looked up, Susan was staring at me as if waiting for something. We looked at each other for a while. But then, "Time's up," said a waiter's voice, and our special evening came to an end. Afterward, we went home with few words exchanged. The next day, after thanking me, Susan left the house. Looking at the now spacious house, a sense of emptiness began to settle in my heart. Months later, suddenly, the doorbell rang, and I went to open the front door. Standing there was my ex-wife, Lucy. "Long time no see," I furrowed my brow. "What are you doing here?" As I asked in a low voice, Lucy flinched and, for some reason, tears started to stream down her face. "I'm sorry, Michael, I said some terrible things." Lucy kept apologizing to me. And then, to my surprise, she said she wanted to get back together. Lucy rambled on without waiting for my reaction, explaining her situation. Apparently, her lover's business had tanked. Despite having looked down on me, just a few months later, his company went under. Not that I felt any schadenfreude towards her lover, nor did I care. I just found it annoying to have Lucy crying in front of me. "Please, Michael, let's start over." While Lucy pleaded through tears, all I could think about was how to send her away. Then, my cell phone rang. It was Susan. I answered immediately. "Hello," Susan shouted, "help me. Apparently, her ex-husband is out front of the house. And he keeps shouting, 'Please, let's make up.'" I told her, "I'm on my way, just wait for me," and I put on my shoes and opened the door. But Lucy followed me out the door, tugging at my clothes. "Please, Wait, don't go. Don't abandon me. I glared at Lucy, who was throwing a tantrum like a child. Feeling my anger, she slowly let go of my hand. I locked the front door slowly. There was no way for Lucy to get back in now. I'm sorry, but I just don't love you anymore. See ya, I spat out before hurrying over to Susan's place. Standing in front of Susan's apartment was her ex-husband, who, to me, was the other man in an affair. When he noticed me, his mouth flapped open and closed, but I just glanced at him and called Susan. It's me. I've just arrived at your door. Right after that, the door burst open and Susan came flying out and hugged me. I stroked her hair for a bit before suggesting, how about we go out for a little while, and took her hand. Then, the other man shouted, "Wait, Susan, it's all my fault. Please forgive me." Susan covered her ears to the pitiful cries of a man who had lost his company and his status. He's really saying the same stuff as Lucy used to say. With a wry smile, I turned back to the other man. If you're that lonely, take my ex-wife, Lucy. Do as you please. Misery loves company. Susan and I are getting married. Don't ever show your face to us again. With that, I firmly pulled Susan's hand and left the scene. We sat down on a bench in the nearby park. This feels like something out of a drama. Susan laughed, and I realized I was still holding her hand. Sorry, I said, hastily trying to let go, but she gripped my hand tightly. That thing you said earlier, about wanting to get married, is it true? I was a bit startled but took her hands in both of mine with resolve. It's true. I love you. Tears flowed down Susan's cheeks. I feel the same way. A year later, we were officially married, and now we're living together. Susan is thriving as a super housekeeper. She might be what you call a good luck woman. After our marriage, I got promoted to supervisor and started being called a potential executive. And now there's a baby in Susan's belly. For the new life, I'm looking to the future with even more determination. The scars from the affair have long since vanished for both me and Susan. The dark past doesn't stand a chance against a bright future.